Welcome to Scaling Smart, the Quickly Hire podcast, where we explore how founders are building exceptional teams and scaling their businesses. I'm your host, Brad Morrison. In each episode, we dive into the journeys, challenges, and strategic decisions that shape growing companies. These conversations will give you practical insights on when and how to leverage fractional talent to accelerate your growth. Hey everyone, I am here today with Doug Brown, founder and president of White Dog Labs and Brownstone Marketing. Doug, thanks for joining today.
I'm glad to be here, Brad.
Well, Doug has a long career in marketing and running agencies. And so, Doug, I'd love for you to give us a little bit of your story and how you got into being a founder of multiple agencies over the years and what your specialty is.
Yeah, that's a good question, what my specialty is. Maybe at the end of this, we'll figure it out.
That's right.
My specialty maybe is just starting companies. I've started 5 so far. I came out of school, I won't go too far back, but did most all corporate. So I was in sales when I came out, and then I got into a corporate marketing department and got a taste for that. And then my last real job was of a German company called Brocott. And they let me internally, a software company, and we sold fintech back then. We just called it banking services with software. But they let me set up a little mini agency. So I would sell different things internally to our clients. And I really got a taste for it. So this was denim.com, that imploded. And I went and worked for a little agency just trying to sell something. And to much of my surprise and their surprise, I sold a whole lot of business. So in 2002, I left that little agency and took a couple clients with me, who were friends of mine, and started Brown Bag Marketing. And 2002, things weren't so great. We had just come out of .com and things were rough. So my method was I would go into companies and say, look, you've fired all your marketing people. So they either had just a vice president of marketing with no tactics, or they had somebody, a young kid who was there good on a Mac and good at marketing, or could do creative or something. So I would say, look, I'll either come in and be your VP of marketing and direct the young person, or we'll come in and be your tactical team and give you more arms and legs. And once again, it worked and successful. And we grew that from 2002 to when I sold it. We grew from me to 70 people in total, and had an opportunity to work with really great clients here in Atlanta, but then also throughout the country. And then we got in 2006 into Pfizer Animal Health. And animal health soon became our biggest niche. And so my wife always gets up from parties when I start talking about animal health, because I go on and on about it. I know more about animal health than most people, certainly than most normal people. So marketing to vets or to pet owners is what we really specialized in. So we ran a lot of drugs. We were their agency of record for a lot of drugs that people know, Rimadyl and Revolution and several of those. And so that's been a big part of us. We also had fintech and manufacturing and other things, financial services, obviously being here in Atlanta. So grew that. And then we got into rebate and rewards, where if you bought Rimadyl, you could then turn your receipt in and get a rebate back. So like a $10 check. When you filled out that rebate form and mailed it, it went to us, and we processed it and entered it, and then actually printed the check and mailed it to them. So at one time we were running which Pfizer Health became Zoetis when they spun it out. And Zoetis now is the world's largest manufacturer of drugs for animals. We ran all their rebate and reward programs, and we also run Merck, who's probably number 2, their parasiticides, so the flea and tick. Spun the company out and we called Vetlocity. So that was my second agency. So I guess the 70 people was a combined Vetlocity and Brown.
First of all, I love the niche focus that you had and how doing that well, with one client leads into others. But what you mentioned early on, which is in a way similar to what, us and other companies do now, is you kind of served as a fractional marketing organization or lead for different companies.
And you were doing that early on because of the dot-com bust.
Yeah.
They did not have the talent. And so you were able to step in and kind of fill that gap on a fractional basis. Tell me a little about the services that you were providing at that point before the focus on kind of fulfillment of the rebate program.
Yeah, I mean, it was really just about anything. Like I said, depending on if I was the senior person, then I would be providing more strategy and guidance, things of that nature. In '02, we were still selling websites and convincing people to be on the internet. So a lot of times I would help companies transition into the digital age. And then if they had a senior person, we were just tactical. I mean, brochures and copywriting and, branding, messaging, in any of those things I could do. So what I always like to do, and even with my companies today, very adaptable. It's oftentimes people say, like, what kind of agency are you? And I would say, what kind of agency do you want us to be? And so I always tried to keep very versatile people who could do a lot of different things. I always surrounded myself with kind of Swiss Army knife team members. So that was, I think, a part of our success, was that we were very flexible and rigid. Now, being flexible and rigid has its upsides and downsides. Your upsides is that you can do a lot of things. The downside is when you do a lot of things, managing that is very difficult. And that is the challenge. And this is why I love your model and why we've enjoyed working with you in my 2.0 agency world, is that it gives me the flexibility to bring in experts as needed. Back then in '02, you hired somebody, you had a 401k and a salary and a desk and a computer, very expensive model. So I don't believe a brown bag model from '02 or even the early 2000s. It's difficult to run in this day, in this environment, our economy. And so, really enjoyed partnering with you all.
You and I have a very similar background. I started an agency. It was 2004, so around the same time. It was in Savannah, so not far away, but a much smaller city and less clients. And it was a lot of fun, but you're right. What led us to kind of get out of that business was the fact that, everything had to be custom. We looked at our project tracker at one point, and we had, in some stage of still being open, not complete, we had 1,000 tasks and projects in that we were working on in some stage. Some of those are tiny, some of those were bigger, and you can't operate that way. Just the amount of information that you have to manage and wrangle makes it really hard to scale. So that's kind of where the second iteration of our company, just like you kind of found something that is a little more scalable to focus on, was really just focused on WordPress maintenance and support and doing as a service for other agencies, and then which led then to Quickly Hire. But I've seen it, and something that you mentioned there about kind of figuring out which way you go early on. For us, I mean, at that time, there were people that really didn't make the distinction between networking and servers and website. So the IT and the creative and marketing kind of was all one thing at that time. And so even separating that out was hard, because I'd find myself literally running cables, and then I would build a website for someone, right? Or do traditional marketing campaigns. So tell me a little bit about Brownstone and White Dog Labs, and then we'll talk about the evolution of the org chart.
Yeah, it's extremely different. And so I have two new agents. So I sold Brownback and Velocity in 2019, 4 months before COVID. I worked there for a year, but we were in the height of COVID in 2020. And then 2021, I just started doing consulting again. And I didn't know what I was going to do next, but people were calling me and saying, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And so out of necessity, I started just picking up things. So I was doing a lot of like go to market, a lot of really high strategy stuff, working with the C-suite, and really enjoyed that. But inevitably, they said, well, can you do our website? Can you do these other things? So I started looking around, and because of Brownback and, have owning that for 18 years, 17 years, I had a lot of freelancers and ex-baggers, as we call them, around town or over the country. So I was able to reach out and kind of form my own virtual company. And so where we netted out, we were called something different when I was Projects Group, was just my consulting firm. But then we launched Brownstone to get serious about it. And my pitch, and if you see our website, is that we do marketing that's built to fit. So I always tell people, and apologies to agency owners out there, but the dirty little secret of agencies are two things. One, our ability to write content is as good as the people I have on staff. Because if I outsource that, it really kills my margins. And trying to have a writer to be able to write technical, to be able to write social, long ball copies, we used to call it, for a big brochure, snappy, taglines, that's really a challenge to try to find that unicorn out there. So what I do now is I go in and assess a project, and then we say, who are the best people for that? And whether I say, I've got a ex-employee or a freelancer that's excellent at technical writing, or I call up Kobe at Quickly Hire and tell him what I'm looking for, and then you all work your magic. So that's really been the success and the ability of why this is really scaled. The second little dirty secret is that typically, you see me at the beginning, but then the young people come in because agencies make money on young people who we don't pay as much. So here with a Quickly Hire, it allows me, you all pay you folks well, but it's a very reasonable rate here in the US. So I can take more risk in things. Like I can have someone who we've brought on for 10 hours a week, and I don't sit around and stress if they only worked 8. But when I was on Brown Bag and Velocity, we were looking at, their productivity. We were looking at it daily and beating people over the head. And because it was serious stuff and paying them a lot of money. I had a $6 million payroll a year, $6 million a year. So every 2 weeks, $250,000. I'd always say our lights would dim when we would run payroll. So that stress from my early days, I don't have now. And I really enjoy this flexibility. And for the clients, some clients, some people I talk to, they still want the traditional agency. They want to come into a boardroom and have meetings and all that. And I'd say that's not us. But you're going to get very experienced people who are experienced and know how to do what you need to have happen. And they're going to be curated, if you will, for that project. Because we may even have, typically in the agency world, we assign a team and they stay with that client. And that's good because there's consistency, there's equity in their knowledge, there's all of that. But once again, you're asking the same team to maybe design a mobile app, to do a website, to then do a trade show booth. Those are different skill sets. And so I really have enjoyed this model. We've had good success. So Brownstone is more of a general. It's like Brown Bag. We're more general. We work in animal health on that side, but we also work in human health. We've got a real estate company. We've got several folks, and we do a broad range of services. White Dog Labs was leaning into my animal health experience. It's dedicated to working with vet clinics and pet centers, which like doggy daycare, boarding, grooming, to do their local marketing. That's really our focus. So we work with about 56 different locations currently, and should be the end of the year be double that. But we're doing stand up a Google friendly website. We'll then do their SEO. We'll do PPC. We'll help them get their citations or digital listings up to speed, because so many of those small businesses, that's really a weak point for them. They have a website that they probably built it, had someone build it, could have been their nephew or could have been in some company they haven't talked to in 5 years. And it's out of date. It's not up to standards. They're structurally and technically, it's not Google friendly. So we work with that. And so we're on a retained service with them. So the Quickly Hire, what it's allowed me to do is that we've snapped into people like for PPC. We've got a writer and a designer. She's a unicorn. She can do both. Then have a PPC expert and Nasser. And they are handling all of those locations. And then at some point, we'll snap another team that's very similar to them. And that's what Quickly Hire allows me to do. Going back to traditional with Brown Bag and Velocity, I had a recruiter full-time in-house. So we were constantly recruiting. And that was a huge expense and a huge time suck. I've interviewed thousands of people, literally. That's not an exaggeration. And that was a big part of my week was I'd have 3 interviews. Not having to do that. I mean, you all are great at curating for me when I give you the description. And then typically I talk to them about 20 minutes and yay or nay. And so it has really allowed me to scale. And I contend I'll be able to do perhaps the same revenue we were doing at Brown Bag between these two companies. One, because of the ability to scale with organizations like yours, and two, with AI. And we can do probably, what it took 3 or 4 people to do, you can do with one. And maybe they're not even full time.
I'm glad you brought up AI, Doug, because I did want to talk a little bit about how obviously, in our 20 plus years of doing this, we've seen that change over the last couple of years, and it's changing at a rapid pace. I did want to just acknowledge, though, I appreciate the feedback there. Love hearing that, that's our intent with our model with Quickly Hire, is that you don't have the overhead burden. You have people who are trained, ready to go. They're not junior people. These are experienced people that can come in and deliver value from day one. I love your model of deploying it on a project basis as opposed to even a team basis, which is great. And it sounds like it gives you a lot of flexibility to kind of be agile and deliver a great service to your customers. So that's incredible. Appreciate you sharing that with us. With AI, how are you currently using that on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, Brad, you hit the nail on the head. It's not changing back once again, when you and I started agencies, trends back in the early 2000s, trends used to be seasonal or for a year or something. And then I remember reading when the internet started, trends are only like 6 months now. Trends now are 3 days.
That's right.
And AI and the internet, as you know, the first round of internet, no one really knew what to do with it. The dot-com bust because it was nonsense, most of it. By the way, for all the youngsters out there, about 3 people made a lot of money at dot-com.
That is very accurate.
I was worth $6 million at age 28 because my software company tripled in value or whatever. And then in about a span of 8 weeks, we went to zero because there just wasn't any people just hadn't figured it out. So it took really that what they call 2.0 or later after the bust. That's where all the big companies started, Facebook's, Google. I mean, there wasn't an iPhone in '02. And so it took a while to figure that out. AI, the same thing. But what's so fascinating now, it's changing daily. I log in, I go between ChatGPT, Claude, but I'm really using Manus, which is a new one that I found. And right before I got on this call, I was asking Manus. So when I first started using it, it was great at go research trends for pet owners. I mean, it was really good at that. Today I said, go out and we're trying to find a domain for a client. And I said, go search out there. And Manus went out in GoDaddy, it went to 4 or 5 different registrars, searched and came back with a response and told me, these are the ones that are taken, these are available. And it said, would you like for me to go ahead and register the domain?
That's that next step, like purchasing for you.
It didn't do that last week.
Wow.
So AI has changed everything. I feel I'm a little older, and most of my peers, when I start talking about AI, their eyes glaze over. They look really scared. I'm trying to lean into it because I think there's going to be 2 sets of people. It was just like the internet and internet banking. Before I started Brown Bag, S1, which at the time was called 5 Paces, and we launched the world's first internet bank. We had an ad campaign that said, in the future, there'll be 2 types of bankers, those who embrace internet banking and those who never saw it coming. AI is the same way. You're either going to run beside it or it's going to run over you. And I will tell all the young people out there, embrace it. If you are scared of it, it will bite you. We're exploring things like having AI manage projects and actually telling different resources with their role. So like taking an Asana type platform, but building that in AI and having it talk to those type of platforms. So eventually you could say I could upload the proposal we did and say, hey, put together a project plan and then suggest the resources that would be appropriate for this on my built to fit model. And we're very close to having that done. It doesn't work great right now, but it worked better than it did last week. I use AI daily for writing proposals, just getting me started. I have a terrible white page syndrome where, blank page, I don't know, I think that's the term, but I just stare at it like, And I think, I spend the first hour thinking about how I should format this. Should it be horizontal? Does the logo go up here? So I procrastinate for about an hour and then I start trying to write some words. It is so nice to be able to say like, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. And copy's not always great. Or, they say fondly yours or something I would never say. But at least
Game changer.
yeah,
Game changer is something
game
that they use all
changer.
the time. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll say like, hey, make this a little less formal. And it'd be like, hey, Kat, what's up? Here's your proposal. Like, nah, went too far. But I do find the AI is learning to talk more like me. But, just to get me started. And that would have taken a lot of people and a lot of edits. We use Box, which is like a Dropbox or, in the cloud. And, people would go in and make edits. And I would notice we would have like in a document 45 rounds of edits, with different people. And now you cut that down to maybe 2 or 3 rounds because you've gotten such a good head start. And so that's how we use it for efficiency, sometimes creativity, saying like, hey, throw out some ideas. We were having to name this event recently. And yeah, we used AI we didn't pick any of the ones he came up with, but it got the juices rolling. So it's a great start. And eventually it probably will pick the event name for us. It really is allowing to go faster and faster and have less resources and to be able to complement that with your services. Like I said, I can get someone for 10 hours a week, very experienced, and I combine that with AI. That's like 5 people. And, that'd be $500,000 salaries, or not salaries, but combined, with overhead. And I have to buy them a computer, to buy them a monitor. Heck, when I sold the company, we had like 78 monitors or 170. It was something insane. And I just, God, I wish I had that money back.
It's definitely powerful to not have to carry costs like that for sure. AI in the hands of people that have the experience and context and background and have done campaign after campaign after campaign, that's a differentiator. That's not the same as just someone at a client of ours, right? Just using that technology. There is a benefit to the people and the background and the experience being able to do that. We see that all the time, just in the way that, we use Anthropic Claude for a lot internally. And just the way we set up projects makes a big difference in the output that you're going to get.
Yeah.
I think there's still a need for people
Agreed.
here. I think that need changes. And I think it's interesting that even the hours can change, right? So you may, like you said, the efficiency and output that you're getting with a 5-hour a week, 10-hour a week, 15-hour a week exceeds what was often done with people figuring out how to spend 8 hours a day in an office.
Well, we were so hard on productivity. I would see things like they were billable because they were billing to cleaning their desk or, people were making up hours. And,
Yep.
Here, typically when we get super busy, we have to go back to Kobe, your team, and say, we need more hours. But we just did this. We had a 5-hour a week developer. We scaled her up for 1 month. And because we had a ton of work and now we're scaling her back down, but then we'll probably do that again. And she's in Canada, but we also have folks in Europe and you talk about the hours, when we wake up, their work is done. And that's another thing that makes us more efficient, as opposed to we're all being on the same. We were told that you had to all be on the same time zone. And that was very true in the past. Now with AI and all the tools, it's an advantage for us. They're working while we sleep, more with less. AI and the combination of AI and your services really expanded to full 24 hours a day. And that's really a big advantage. The reason young people oftentimes get in trouble with AI, where they're having them write papers or their resumes or whatever, is that, to your point, if you're going to use AI, you have to know if what they're saying is correct or accurate or helpful or not. You can't just trust it. So time maybe, but I totally agree. Someone's got to work on the robots. That's what I always say. And having context combined with AI and experience, that's where it's really powerful.
It's encouraging to me. I saw recently, like you said, things are changing every couple of days. It's funny. We work with also a consultant on AI as we try to integrate some AI into our platform. And it's funny when we have these, once every couple of week meetings, it's like which language model, which AI model
Is winning.
is performing better at the moment, right? And it's like this race is like, well, ChatGPT, Gemini 2.5 Pro, like it just changes, and it really is. It's daily. But I did see where Ohio State recently announced that they're encouraging students to use AI in the classroom. And I know here the University of Florida, I think, even has created curriculum in K-12 schools on using AI. And that to me, instead of don't use it. For us, it was, you can't use a calculator here. And then at times, everyone's using a calculator. And then, you have with AI, it's like, don't use it, you're cheating. And now to kind of embracing that, hopefully people learn to use that and can, when they get in, position of business owner or working with a company in their professional capacity, they know how to effectively use the technology that's available.
I think that's going to be a big criteria for new hires. If I was interviewing for full time and had a young person, I would ask them, which set LLM, do you think is winning right now? Tell me how you could use it in your job. Because once it's hard for probably some people to realize this, but when I started in sales, we didn't have computers. We had one in the office, but that was used for word processing, which meant to type memos and letters. They just introduced voicemail. So there was a time where and I remember when they introduced voicemail, I was a young buck. I was 23. I loved it. I like, well, why wouldn't we have this? But the older guys were like, oh, I'm not using that dang thing. I just talk to my clients. They don't have to listen to any kind of recording. And then when the internet came out, once again, we were in school. We didn't use computers. And then when internet first came out, there was a lot of resistance to that as well. I think where the fear on AI is that they think like this is all brand new. It's not. It's the same thing. Just it's been happening throughout time and technology. Now this is moving faster than anything I've ever experienced in my lifetime. But I can't stress enough. I've got a 25-year-old and a 22-year-old just getting out in the workplace. And I get on them constantly. I'm like, what are you doing with AI? How are you using it in your everyday life? Because it's going to be there. You've got to embrace it.
That's great advice. I want to go down this route of, what advice would you give young people who might be interested in starting their own company, whether it's an agency or something different? You've seen it. You've worked with clients and startups over the course of your background. What advice could you give to a potential founder to maybe help them avoid a pitfall that you've seen before?
That's a great question. And I answer that a lot now. When I see a young person starting an agency like here in Atlanta, a lot of times I'll reach out to them and say, hey, let's have lunch. And I just say, look, I can tell you everything not to do. And that's the benefit. I can't always tell you what to do, but I can tell you what not to do. There are so many things. One of the first things I say is like, hey, set realistic goals. And also set goals that you agree with. And what I mean by that is I always say, how much money you want to make? How much money you want to make this year? You want to make $1 million? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to build $1 million. I'm like, great. Make that your goal. Now, if you get to $1 million, celebrate. This is the mistake I did. If I did that $1 million, I was sad that I didn't do 2. And all I knew how to do was grow. So I think there's 3 things I would tell people. If you want a growth-oriented company or you want a lifestyle company. Lifestyle company is you're just making nice money. It's all about me. You're not calling the team a family. You're not building corporate culture. I mean, maybe you are, but it's really about how much money you're taking home. If you want a growth company, learn to eat cereal a lot and don't expect to make a lot of money at the beginning. But if you're going to do that, build the infrastructure to support that growth. So what kind of company you want to have, and then based on that, build that foundation and build it to support either one, lifestyle company or a growth company. And then when you hit your lifestyle company, if you said every year I want to take home $300,000, $500,000. If you do that, celebrate, be happy, and don't get greedy. And if you're a growth company, set those realistic goals, set them, put them down on paper. And if you hit that, then celebrate and then set the goals for the next year. But I felt like when I was young that I was constantly looking over the mountain, trying to see over the mountain. And I'd get to the top of one mountain and say like, there's another mountain. I should have been on that one. I should have been up there dancing. So those are some of the things. And then I guess the biggest thing is to hire people who are smarter than you. I've done that certainly. And it's been, I think if I have a talent, it's for evaluating talent. And I always would look and say like, this young person or this old person, they're smarter than me. And I like that. And the other thing I was looking for in the person is that they were the smartest person in the room, but no one knew it. Meaning that they're quiet, they're listening, they're adding value by listening and talking or adding input that's appropriate and relevant and equal to that situation.
Great advice. And it's kind of counterintuitive to some of the things going on today with hustle culture and creator economy and, me. And like, there's just so much of that. And I love what you said about smartest person, but no one knows about.
Yeah.
That is,
you put that in our job descriptions. Like you're great for this job if you're the smartest person in the room and no one else knows it. We talked about the .com and that was more our era where everyone was always, worried that I don't have a .com. I'm not going public. I don't have an IPO. We're also seeing that now. And the young people are such under tremendous pressure because I was talking to a buddy the other day. Growing up, I don't think I ever said the word billion. And now we throw around billion, we still say like, oh, they're a millionaire. That doesn't mean anything anymore. You got to be a billionaire now. And the FOMO is what kills people on social media. They're not having as much fun as they look like they are. I promise you, they still have bad days. They don't always look like that. And not everyone is a billionaire. And so we set our goals, these unrealistic goals. And that is what I think holds people back oftentimes from starting a company or taking a risk because they have this unrealistic goal of, I need to be Elon Musk. Well, there's only one Elon Musk.
I really also like what you said about celebrating the wins. That's something that I try to tell my team and have for years. It's very important and it gets into the balance. It's not just, we're focused on the next mountain, the next plateau, trying to climb, right? For a minute, just sit there.
Yeah.
Sit there and enjoy it. Appreciate, the people, the things, everything that you've accomplished in there, but even the small ones, right? Maybe it's a Friday afternoon. It's like, I had a really good week this week and kind of counting through that. But that encouragement helps propel forward also, which is great.
Great cities, in my mind, are measured by three things: their people, their parks, and their parades. You have every great city, New York, Chicago, San Francisco. They all have different vibes. Their people are different, right? But they all have great parks for community. And then their parades, think about the best parades in the country. That applies to companies as well. So it's their people, their parks, or that community, how they come together. It could be an office space. It could be virtual like this. It could be a gathering spot that they all come in and out of. And the parades are how they celebrate. It's also how they mourn. Great parades in New Orleans are funerals, but it's a celebration of that life. So I think companies should be measured on the same thing, and they should look at those key things. The right people. Am I providing a community that people are learning, growing, that it's profitable? There's a lot of companies that aren't profitable, and that's a negative community. And then how they celebrate, how they recognize each other, and how they celebrate wins and mourn losses. That's such an important part. And we get so caught up in all the minutia, all the details, and those three things have nothing to do with AI, right? Those are just good old-fashioned building a company. I would stress people to slow down and think about that.
Thank you for sharing that. It's a takeaway for me as well. I love the analogy of that. It's something that can be a little challenging sometimes with community in the remote and global
Agree.
environment, but it's possible. It means
It's
you
a
spend some
reality.
extra time thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a reality now. I mean, so, what we're trying to do, Jesse, who's my partner at White Dog Lab, we're talking about, like, we forget sometimes some of our contractors because we have so many, or we engage them for a long time.
Yeah.
And these aren't the quickly hire folks. These are our other onesie twosies. But I said, hey, once a month, let's bring all the contractors together and everyone, and just we talk about work, but just meet each other because we have fascinating people. Like I said, you have people all over the world: South Africa, Brazil, Canada, Spain. I don't know where some of them. I always have to ask everyone, where do you live? Minnesota. I mean, we got them everywhere. So just bringing people together, because as humans, we still need that. So I think of the
Right.
three, the peoples and the parade, I think the community is probably the most challenging one right now. When I first started, I really struggled. And I was telling my wife that I don't know if I know how to start a company without an office, without chairs and desks. And it took a while. And it's been a struggle for me. I'm set in my ways and love a whiteboard. You had to get used to it. It's just reality. But you still have to remember that they're humans and everyone needs some interaction and praise and feedback. And maybe, Brad, if you recall how we met, someone told me about the WordPress services and really interested. And I hunted you down. I think I stalked you on LinkedIn. And then we talked and we realized we knew each other, like from Atlanta and some small, big town. But I told you this at the time. I said, I have used dev services nearshore and offshore and had some success. I had never found anyone who ever could put together marketing services, the type that I would consume, that we could bring in temporary people and be all over the world. And I was very skeptical. And when we've got our first person, Carrie, who's been with us now for a year and a half, I think, I was just amazed. And I told you that I was a skeptic, but it does work. So this has been a great model. And there's no way I could have started these companies without having a partner like you guys. One, I'm too old to have HR and deal with all the nonsense. But two, it's such an uncertain time that having that payroll, it's just too much stress. So I love the service you provide. And once again, I was a skeptic, but now I'm a fan.
Thank you so much, Doug. We're so appreciative of you. And I know the pros that work for you, they speak so highly of your company, your leadership, the clients that they work with, the engaging projects that they're on. It's fulfilling work, and you've built something special. Even if it's a new model in a different way than you've done it previously, you've adapted and you've got an incredible company. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your insight and advice, learning about your story. You've been fantastic to work with, and I'm glad that the fractional model is working well for White Dog Labs in Brownstone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Scaling Smart. If you're building a team and want to leverage fractional talent to accelerate your growth, visit quicklyhire.com to find pre-vetted professionals who can help you scale. Don't forget to subscribe for more founder insights on smart team building.